Okay, I forgot to start the recording, so I'm starting now. Those that are just watching the recording and had not joined live, we just mixed a little bit of white and some black to create a neutral gray to cover the background. Okay, and I'm just going to give this a few minutes to dry. As I said, if you're in a hurry ever when you're painting and you want your background or any layer to dry faster, you can use a heat gun or even a blow dryer to dry it faster. But since I'm waiting to allow for you guys to do this, I'm sure some of you have a larger work surface than I'm working on. I am not going to use the heat gun right now. So if you've taken some of my classes before, you know that sometimes I have you draw out the image with chalk or pencil first. I am not doing that tonight with this painting. We're going to do a very faint outline in white, which we will then paint over using, using a thin brush, whatever thin brush you have, and then some white paint and very little pressure. That will just allow you, and the white paint can be painted over. So don't worry if there's any mistakes. It doesn't have to be perfect. If it makes you nervous, you feel free to use a pencil or chalk or charcoal or anything you might have on hand. But I'll be using the paint. Do we have any questions before I move on? Or does anybody need a little more time for theirs to dry? Mine is still a little tacky, but. So gnomes are supposed to be very small. So you'll see this little guy is actually leaning up against the milk glass. So the perspective, the perspective is going to look a little odd at first. And when we're doing the outlines, it might look a little bit like an abstract painting until we start coloring in some. So I'm going to take, I have a very thin brush. If all you have is just a regular round brush or flat brush, whatever you have will work. I would not use anything wide, like super wide, like what we use for the background. But just any thin brush will work. And I would thin the paint out with some water, or if you are someone who's familiar with me and have the glazing medium, feel free to use that as well. It just thins out the paint, makes it a little bit easier to work with. And we're going to start with the glass. So I'm going to come over here on the left side of my canvas, and I'm just going to come very lightly and make a vertical line. Okay. And then I'm going to figure out how wide I want my glass to be, and I'm going to come and do another vertical line here. Okay. And you don't have to rush when making your lines, or really with anything with the painting. You don't want to rush too much. If you try to rush, it'll make it harder to do. And then I'm just going to do a little bit of a curved line down at the bottom to close off the glass. And then a line across the top for the top of the glass. Now we will add shading and all that, and it will make it look a little bit more realistic as we go along. And then I think I don't want my milk all the way to the top, so I'm going to pick a spot maybe right here, and I'm going to do a wide curve line there. And then to make it look like you can see the liquid across, I'm doing another line curved the opposite way on the back. Okay. So now I want some cookies. So I think I'm going to do chocolate chip. And you don't want this to be a perfect circle because baked cookies are not perfect. So I'm just doing some wavy lines. If I'm going too fast for anybody, please speak up. Okay. And this is just a sketch, so I'm not too worried. And then I'm going to make it look like a bite has been taken out of it. And I'll maybe do another one laying flatter underneath it. Okay. Now Snowball McJingle, that's what I call my gnome, obviously is small and can't lift the glass. So I think I'm going to add a straw here. So just a slanted line and then another one. And a little curve at the top. Okay. For those that are just joining, this is recorded and I will send it out to everybody after the fact. So you will get all the beginning instructions, but basically we did a neutral background. I mixed white with a little bit of black to do a neutral gray. And now we're just drawing out the outlines of the image with white. You feel free to use a pencil or chalk or a charcoal or anything you have if you do not want to draw with paint. Okay. And now we're going to have our little gnome who's so full from that bite of cookie that he is just falling asleep laying next to this glass. So I'm going to do a little line right there. This is going to be the top of his hat. It's folded over. And then a little line there. Okay. Then I'm going to make it curve a bit. And then bring it down. And come out a little bit there. Sometimes I make little brims on his hat. And then just make the bottom of the hat. And we'll do a little bit of an oval here, or part of the, I guess a backwards C to show where his nose is. And then because he's got a full belly, we're not actually going to see his belly here, but we are going to see his hair. His hair covers his whole body, but his hair is going to round out and show this really, he's got a really full body. So I'm just rounding it out here and making just little jagged marks here. That's where I'm thinking the hair is going to have some movement to it. So just, you don't have to worry about the exact markings that I'm doing here. I'm just playing around with it. So he's got a really, rounded belly because he's so full. And I think I'm going to show his little feet. So like a teardrop shape for his little feet there, okay? Do we have any questions so far? Okay. So that is your outline. If you want to add like a tree on the side or anything else, feel free to do that. Make this your own. But in just a moment here, I'm going to show you how to start filling in the color. I'm just rinsing the color out of my brush and then setting it aside here. I'm sorry? Okay. Is everybody doing well? Do we need a bit more time? If you need more time, just let me know. Just unmute and let me know, and I'll hold on. Sure, I can definitely demo a tree in the picture. The trees I do typically a simple brush stroke with it, but I can show a little bit of an outline. So since he's so tiny, I would think the tree would be kind of big in the background, so maybe you wouldn't see the whole thing. So I'm thinking you're gonna see just part of it here. So I'm just gonna do some sort of lines like that. And then as we paint, the only thing is, I did not tell you guys to use green, but if you have green on hand, I can show you how to paint this while I'm painting. So I will add green to my palette here. For those that have access to green, I like using this phthalo cyanine or phthalo green yellow shade. A emerald green, leaf green, anything like that will work well. Okay. So I will do that last, since we're, this is the focus over here. But I'm gonna take, I have a little bit of a wider brush. This is called a flat brush. You can use a round brush. You can use any brush that you happen to have on hand. And we'll just start filling in some, okay? I like to work from the back forward so that if we make any mistakes, we're not covering up work that we've already done. So I'm taking my flat brush here and I'm gonna go in a little bit of white and I'm gonna fill in the milk. If you are using a student grade paint or craft grade paint, sometimes they do not have as much pigment, or actually they don't have as much pigment as professional heavy bodied paints. So you may need to do 2 coats for your colors. And even with the heavy bodied, certain colors you do see through. If you are not familiar, I'll actually do a little mini lesson here with professional paints. They are labeled with how opaque they are, and opaque means how much you can see through them. So if you see the difference here with my titanium white, this little square here is fully black. That means that it is opaque as they make their paints. But this phthalocyanine green has just an empty square. That means this one is transparent. So if we were to just paint with this, you would see through it. Now you can mix the two and have a lighter green, which would then be opaque because you've added the opaque white to it. So that's just a little mini lesson there. And it's the same thing with craft paints. Some of them are a bit more transparent than others. So I'm just making sure not to paint my cookie because that will be a different color. The cookies, I should say. And I'm just filling in all of my milk. So now to get the edge of the glass here, I'm going to use a little bit of black. And just like I did with the white when I was doing the line, I'm thinning it out. You can use either the glazing medium or you can use water if you don't have that. And I'm just going to go over this line here. And just make the edge of the glass there. And then, because I want you to see that the milk is kind of oval here, I'm going to come in right where that line would be and just put that there and I kind of outline it, I guess. Now this does give it a bit of cartoony look, but I kind of like how that looks. Okay. So I'm going back to using my flat brush and I'm getting as much of the water out as I can. And I'm going to dab in a little bit of white and then wipe some off. And I'm going to come in and do a few highlights here to kind of make it look like the glass might be rounded or reflecting. There's no right or wrong here. And then maybe a couple thin reflective marks here and there. Okay. Nothing too scary. Just adding a bit of highlight here and there. Okay. Just to make it look like it's shining a little bit. Again, this is a cartoony one, so it's not super accurate, but it sure is fun, I think. Okay. So now I am going to mix the color for the base color for my cookie. So I'm going to be using this dark brown or burnt umber color. I'm going to add some white. So you have like this baked cookie color, and I like to add just a teensy bit of yellow to it. Okay. And just fill in your cookie. I'm going to switch to my thin brush for the curvy area because I don't want to paint over his shoe. So this is a perfect example of a transparent paint becoming opaque. The burnt umber is typically a more transparent color, and by adding the white and the yellow to it, it then becomes opaque. I'm a paint nerd, so I may throw facts here and there. Okay, I'm sorry. So the colors, I'm sorry if I'm going too fast. The colors I used to mix this are burnt umber or dark brown, white, and just a teeny tiniest bit of yellow to it. Okay. I just switched over to a little bit of a round brush to make this a bit easier on my end, just because the other brush I was using was fighting me. Okay, bye, Jackie. Thanks for joining in. Okay. Is everybody good with the cookies as they are now, or do you need me to hold off? All right. So I'm going to start filling in. We will come back and do a little bit more shading in here on the milk to add even more dimension, and then we'll add some shading into the cookies in a little bit. But we're just doing what's called color blocking for right now. So I'm taking, excuse me, you can use your flat brush, you can use a round brush, really any brush that will fit the size of what you're doing. And just going to use, what I'm using is the alizarin crimson. If you have a bright red or primary red or cadmium red, that'll work too. And I'm just going to fill in this little hat here. And I think I want his shoes to be the same color, so I'm going to fill those in. Actually, maybe I'll do the shoes later. So we're going to do the hair, and I don't want to mess it up.
Hey, Kelly, do we mix the red with the black?
Nope, right now it's just the red color.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. So while people are filling in the hat, I'll just speak a little bit about the hair. Um, the hair tends to scare people, um, but I promise you, if you trust the process, it will work out. We're going to be doing a technique that's called wet on wet. We're going to use white and black to create texture and layering in the hair. Again, this is kind of cartoony, so it doesn't have to look exact, but it is I don't want to say a multi-step process, but it kind of is a multi-step process here on creating that texture and layering on the hair. But just have fun with it, and I promise you it will work out in the end. Okay, so I'm going to start off with the hair by just filling it in with plain white. This is just to cover all of the background color. I'm not worried if it's a little streaky or anything like that. I'm just getting paint on the canvas to kind of break up that gray color that's there. Careful not to cover up his little shoes. I think I'll just do a few little wisps here and there. Just by kind of flicking the brush as I'm painting. Okay. So I have my white down. I'll give you guys just a minute to catch up, and then we're going to do the wet on wet process I was talking about. I'm going to take a little bit of black and mix it with white, and we're going to come up with that kind of grayish color. This might be a little bit darker, but and then figure out kind of how you want the hair to go. And this is going to look ugly. I promise you. This is what I call the ugly phase. You're gonna look at it and go, oh no, 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 no. But just keep at it, and it's gonna work. So I'm gonna make the hair kind of go like this, and then maybe round like this, because I really do want it to look like he's got that really full belly, like he shouldn't have eaten so much of Santa's cookies. I might even add some crumbs later. Okay, so I've got these gray streaks in here. And then I'm just, without washing my brush, I'm gonna wipe some of the paint off, and then I'm gonna dip right back in white. And I'm just gonna come in and just come over it again. And you'll see it starts looking more like hair as you do more strokes, okay? You can add more gray if you need to add some more definition. And if you went overboard with the gray, you can add more white. And there's no right or wrong with this. Play with it until you're happy with it. And I think I like that. Here, next to where his foot is. Okay. I'm gonna let that dry. I'm gonna hold off as you guys play around with it. Is there any question on how I did the hair? All right, so I'm gonna let that dry before I work on that, and I'm gonna turn my attention back over to the milk here. I'm just gonna add some shading, just a little bit, to the edges, just to kind of give it a little bit more dimension here. I'm gonna lighten up this gray that I made for the hair by adding a bit more white to it. You don't want it too stark. You just want just a tinge of gray to it. And I'm gonna come in here and just move my brush like this and kind of add it from the side, okay? Like that. And I'm going to do the same thing on the little bit that's showing over here. Okay. Now I'm going to wipe that off and dip in plain white. And just kind of blend it a bit. And you can go up and down. And that'll help blend it a bit more. And then go back side to side. Okay. And it just kind of adds that little oomph that makes the glass look like it curves a little bit. Since it is cartoony, I'm not overly worried about it looking super realistic, but it's nice to have some sort of depth to it. Okay. So for my straw, I'm just gonna fill that in with white for right now. And just be careful not to go over the lines that you did, the black line that you did for the glass. And you can make the straw fun later on. I'll make it look kind of pepperminty, like striped like a peppermint, I guess. But for right now, just filling it in. So I'm going to add a little bit of shadow to my cookies now. So I'm going to make a slightly darker brown. If you remember, we mixed the dark brown, the burnt umber, with some white and a touch of cadmium yellow or primary yellow, whatever you had. I'm just going to make a slightly darker version of that. And I keep making it too light. There we go. So you just want it like a shade or two darker. And I'm going to come in around the edges here. Maybe about I'm gonna go maybe till about here on the cookie. Okay, so maybe what is that, 2/3 of the cookie. I'm gonna fill in with this darker color. And now if you have more of your lighter color, if you don't, you can always just lighten the one you just made. And we're going to come in and kind of blend it together. And I'll show you how to do that in just a second here. I'm going to take my flat brush here, and I don't have any paint on it. And I'm just coming, just like we did with the glass, and I'm just smoothing out and blending back and forth so there's no hard edges on it. I'm going to do very similar to the other cookie. Figure out where I want it a little bit darker. And pick the lighter color. And then black. Okay. How are we doing on the cookies? Are we good? Need a little more time? It's hard to see with the lighting, but I've blended the darker and lighter together so there's no hard edge. But if you can see, here is darker and here is just a smidge lighter here. And the same here, darker right in here and then just a smidge lighter up here. And then all I'm going to do, just to really make sure that there is a differentiation, whatever, between the two cookies, I'm going to try to shade where the cookie that's standing up and just use the plain brown, so that burnt umber color. And I'm just coming in here and just adding just a little bit of almost like a shadow there. So it looks like that cookie is on top of the other. So I'm going to leave the cookie alone for right now. So we'll move on and we'll do his little shoes. I'm just going to use that same red I used for the hat, which was for me, the alizarin crimson, or you can use your cadmium red or primary red or whatever it is you happen to have. And I'm just going to fill in his shoes. Okay, anyway, so I've got his little shoes filled in, and I am going to paint in his nose. For this, I'm going to use that quinacridone magenta that I had mentioned, or whatever red you have. I just happen to have both of them. And I'm going to make a bright pink color for his little nose here. And I'm just going to paint in his nose right there. I will be shading on his hat next. So just a little bit of a darker color to show that fold there. So I'm mixing some brown with whatever red you use. And it's just going to bring it to a darker shade. And I'm just going to come in right under here. Maybe a little hard to see on the camera. But just right underneath the fold there. To show a little bit of a shadow. Oops. And then a tiny bit at the very bottom of the hat. To kind of show that brim. And I'm going to mix a lighter version here, just slightly lighter. We're going to add a touch of the highlight just to the top of the hat there. Okay. Okay, so to get the shadow, I mixed a dark brown with the red, that whatever red you're using for the hat, and where his hat is folded right here, I just painted that just under it, just to show the shadow from the hat coming over. Okay, and then to do the highlight at the top, I mixed just a plain red, not the darker one, with just a tiniest bit of white to lighten it, and then just did a tiny bit right here across the top. Okay. I also did the darker one right at the bottom of the brim there. Okay. Are we good with the hat, or should I give you guys another minute? Okay, so I'm going to take some of that darker red. I'm going to start adding a little bit of dimension to his little feet. I'm going to add a little bit of that darker color just along the bottom of his feet. And then just a tiny touch of the lighter color right on the little tippy tops. Okay. Any questions? So now I'm going to add chocolate chips to my cookie here. And that's really just dark brown blobs, for lack of a better word. So I'm just using the dark brown or the burnt umber, whatever color you have. And just ever so often, I'm going to do, you can make them circular, you can make little wonky blobs, you can do an actual chips shape, whatever feels good to you. And that's on both cookies. And I think, just for a little fun, I'm going to try to get this paint moving again. I think I'm going to add a few little crumbs down on the ground here. You can use either the light brown or your darker brown, just to add a little fun. So now I've got my straw here. Oh, okay, sorry. Yes, for the shoe, right here, the shoe, I put dark at the bottom here on both shoes, just the bottom part, and then the lighter red just at the very tip of the shoe. Okay, so now for the straw, I'm just gonna fill in a little bit more with some white because I have some streaky spots there. I think I might have thinned out my paint a little bit too much. Oops. And then to get like almost like a little peppermint look, I'm going to make some red stripes. You can use any red color you have, or you could just leave it white, whatever you want. But to make it so that it looks like the color is going around the straw, you'll want the stripes to be lower on one side and kind of curve as it goes around. Okay. Being coffee to do this. So just lower on one side and then higher on the other. You can make them a little thicker if you want. I think I'm going to thicken mine up a little bit. And that's the basics of doing like a pepperminty swirl type of thing. And on that part, the original part of the painting, we are completed. So you have completed that part. And now I'm going to go over here and show how to do a Christmas tree for, I forget who it was that asked. So as I had mentioned, I use this phthalo cyanide or phthalo green. And I'm going to mix it with a little bit of cadmium yellow to get a kind of leafy green color. And then I'm going to take my brush, I'm going to start from the bottom, and I'm going to push up, and as I come up, I'm lifting. So it'll give you kind of a teardrop kind of shape. You're going to do that all the way across the bottom. Okay? And then you'll come over above it, and you'll do the same thing. And I know it looks like it's all merging together. We will do some more layers of color here, so it will look better. As you go up, the tree does get narrower, but I like to do wisps to the side to give it that more natural tree look. And if you have gaps in between, just a flat brush, any flat brush or round brush will do for this. And you'll just keep doing this all the way up your tree. As you see, it starts kind of getting the shape of a tree. And then we'll just let that dry for just a minute. And then we will add some more texture to that. If you want to go ahead and mix the color, if you have completed that, I will just use a little bit of the green with just a touch of the brown, and it'll give you almost like this forest green type of color. I'll wait just a minute. Okay, so now I'm taking that forest green and I'm going to be doing the same thing. You're not going to cover every spot. We're just going to come in here kind of randomly and fill in some darker spots here. It's the same motion, push and pull, push and pull. And then the final one is just to add a touch of white to that original leafy green color. Thin it out if it's starting to dry a bit. And then you'll do the same thing again. Push and pull, push and pull. Just ever so often to get a little bit of texture in on your tree. And if you added too much, you can always come in with your dark green again and add some more. But I think I'm gonna leave it like that for now. Now you could of course add ornaments, which would just be little walls, or have fun with it, any colors you might have to decorate your tree however you would like. So the last step to every painting is to sign your masterpiece, and you can use any color you want at all, any color, and you can sign it anywhere you want also. So I'm going to sign in the corner. Okay. Sure, to do an ornament, you could just pick whatever color you want so that it'll try to stand out. I'll do some red here. And you'll just come in wherever you want an ornament. And you'll just do just a round ball. Okay? You can do multiple colors if you want. I don't have many other colors out on my palette right now, but a nice blue would pop on here. Maybe some yellow. I might add some yellow here. Okay, so that kind of gives you the idea. So on that note, if there aren't any questions, I want to say thank you so much. Oh, tinsel. So the easiest kind of tinsel, if you have like a gold paint, that would be really lovely. I don't really have any easily accessible right now, so I will do it with yellow. But the easiest way to do tinsel is probably just to do little dots like this, going in whichever direction you would want your tinsel to go on the tree. Okay. So I want to thank everybody for joining me this evening and taking about an hour and a half out of your time to listen to me yammer on and paint, something that I love. I hope I brought you a little joy with this class here. If you are interested in more stuff like this, I will send out the link. I have a private Facebook group where I do share free tutorials. I also teach classes regularly. I am going to try to do free ones quarterly to give those of you who may not be able to come to the ones that I do often and pay for them. But I am going to try to do recordings very frequently in my group. So thank you so much again for joining me. I will email you all after with just a little survey and also the link to the group so that you can join in. So if anybody has any questions, I'll stick around for a minute. Otherwise, I will say good night and happy holidays. And I look forward to seeing you again.